That's better. We're about to begin here. Okay, we are on Soulful Living with Phillip Mountrose, my wonderful guest, Jane Goldberg. I'll introduce her in a moment. We produce and give this live show weekly, Facebook Live, timely solutions for an open-minded people like you who want to create a more joyful, meaningful, and prosperous life. And we, Jane, my partner and I and myself, we've had 3 decades of experience in holistic coaching and healing, authors, trainers, founders of IAHP, International Association of Holistic Practitioners. And we are the founders of Awakenings Institute, our nonprofit organization dedicated to creating a more loving world where people's unique gifts can be fostered, honored. And today's show, we have a special guest, as I said, Jane Goldberg here from the New York City area. And she is going to be speaking on the profound, provocative subject that remembering disease is not a mistake. Remember, if you like this show, please share it with others. This is going to be an extremely valuable show. You're going to get some information that you may not ever get elsewhere that could be life-changing on many levels. Hey, Jane, welcome to Soulful Living. Great to see you.
Thank you, Phillip. I'm still trying to get the lighting correct.
Yeah, that's okay. Take your time. And you have been in the field for many years, like myself, have gone through a lot of different things, seen a lot of modalities, developed them, studied them, helped many people with it, including yourself. And Jane is a psychoanalyst, a holistic healing practitioner in New York City. She has a spa there, a very alternative progressive spa called La Casa Spa and Wellness Center. She helps people particularly with cancer and other diseases. She has a lot of things you've never heard of that are very effective, so stay tuned, pay very close attention to this information that you may not get anywhere else. In fact, a lot of the things I learned from Jane, and I'm in the field for 30 years, Jane and I, that I had never encountered before. So this is a real treat, and really pay close attention. Let people know about this unique broadcast. Jane is not widely known, although she should be. Jane, hey, welcome to Soulful Living. Good to see you there.
Thank you, Phillip. Can you hear my dog in the background?
No, but that's nice. Is that the dog that you healed with some of the irradiated stones?
It's not the same dog. That dog was this big. That dog was 6 pounds. This dog is about 20 pounds.
Okay, and we'll tell viewers, listeners, what we're talking about with the irradiated stones. Jane, you want to tell us a little more about yourself? I gave you a little brief introduction there. You want to add some details?
Sure. My journey into holistic health started when my mother was diagnosed about 50 years ago with terminal cancer, and Western medicine offered her nothing. So it was kind of an easy journey into holistic health. Obviously, this is pre-internet, pre-Wi-Fi, pre all of this stuff. And so finding out information about what they were doing all over the world with cancer that was not Western medicine and not chemotherapy and not poison and that kind of thing was not easy, but I did. I found an organization called the Foundation for Advancement of Cancer Therapies, and the director, Ruth Sackman, guided my mother, and the doctor that had been treating my mother said, I don't understand this. I've never seen this before, where the cancer had eaten away your pelvic bone. That bone now is completely normal. I don't understand this. Back then, 50 years ago, we didn't have nearly the treatments and conceptualizations that we have now of what causes cancer and how to reverse it. Basically, she did nutrition, she did detoxification. That's it. That's all she did. And it was enough to reverse her. It was breast cancer metastasized into bone cancer. So oh dear, something happened here.
No, we're good. Keep going.
No, I need to get back to here. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I actually started working with Ruth Sackman, and I became the administrative assistant. So that was kind of my stomping grounds of learning about holistic health. And simultaneously to that, I was training to be a psychoanalyst. And because of my introduction to Ruth Sackman and because of seeing the experience of my mother of reversing her cancer, I got very interested in cancer and kind of specialized in working with cancer patients and saw lots of people do things that doctors were not understanding, reversing their cancers without medical treatment. So that's how I got into it.
That's fascinating and remarkable. And the tip for today that you're focusing on is disease is never a mistake. So since you work with a lot of people with cancer, how did that relate to having cancer?
So I'm going to begin by talking about cure, because cure, of course, is a concept that they use a lot in cancer. And it's become a word that's very laden with meaning and has gotten a lot of people that claim to be able to cure cancer in trouble. Some of them even are dead now, prematurely dead. So I want to talk about a concept of cure that is different than how traditional medicine thinks of it. So in cancer speak, specifically, cure is a 5-year survival rate from the time of the diagnosis. So my mother actually, she eventually did die of cancer, and we can talk a little about that. She outlived her prognosis by many years, and I think that what killed her was my father actually was killed by modern medicine. And he shouldn't have died, but he was overdosed with a drug, and that destroyed his immune system. So my mother essentially was dead 2 years later. I mean, my father was my mother's one and only, and she just adored him to the day he died. And she couldn't find a good enough reason to live without him. So the cancer came back and eventually killed her. But my mother did go down in the annals of cancer records as a cured patient, because she had outlived her 5-year survival rate from the time of the diagnosis of the bone cancer. So the stats are very misleading about cancer. So if you think about cure as reversal of disease, then you don't want to see the disease there anymore. And that's what's getting the physicians in trouble. They're using the word cure. And the pharmaceutical industry doesn't really like it when doctors can cure people with means other than pharmaceuticals. So I want to talk about cure in the etymology of the word. So it comes from cura, C-U-R-A. And actually, its real meaning, its literal meaning in terms of the original Greek word is curiosity, care, and concern. And if you think about that you are concerned about somebody and you do care about somebody when they are diagnosed with a disease. But even more important than that is the other meaning, which is curiosity. If you have curiosity about your disease, what we're calling a disease, which that may be a misnomer, as we're going to talk about. If you have curiosity about what's happening to your body, why it's happening, what the origins of it is, and how your body actually, in its greater wisdom, is trying to protect you. What you're calling a disease is actually the defense mechanism of the body to try to correct whatever it is that's going wrong.
Right.
Then the word cure or cura, meaning curiosity, begins to make a lot more sense. Just have curiosity about what's happening, and you will be led to understanding what it really is, and then thus what you should be doing about it.
So a disease is really kind of calling you to investigate what's going on with yourself, that something's out of balance, something's happening. And instead of being a passive victim and saying, leaving it to doctors and so forth, it's calling you to look inward and examine what's going on.
And you can think about a disease as being a little like dreams. As a psychoanalyst, of course, I'm very interested in dreams. They're messages from the unconscious. You may, but you don't necessarily know what all of the components are that are coalescing together to make the disease, though you may have an idea, but very often it's an unconscious process. So for instance, one of the questions whenever a cancer patient comes to my psychoanalytic office, and I do want to specify, I am a psychoanalyst by profession. We're going to be talking about the body, and I'm interested in the body, and I'm interested in physical diseases, but my profession is to work with the psyche. So my patients are all psychoanalytic patients. So So the first question I ask when a cancer patient comes in and she's coming in, if she's coming into psychoanalysis, she has some idea already that maybe there's a psychosomatic component or there's a psychological stress that could have contributed to the disease. So they already have a predilection for thinking in this way. So the first question I ask is, what caused your disease? What caused the cancer? And it doesn't matter whether they know. And they may think they know and they may be wrong, or they may not have any idea. None of that matters. All that matters is that they apply their mind to coming up with some idea. Wherever their mind takes them is going to be interesting. So they may say, I have no idea. That's interesting. Not to be completely unconscious, that you can't generate a thought. That's an interesting phenomenon. So one of my patients came in and said, when I found out I had cancer, I said, thank God. And I said, well, why is that? And she said, the life that I was living was untenable. It was the only thing that was going to get me to change my life was to get a terrible disease.
Right.
And she did. She actually became a psychoanalyst herself. She cured her cancer. She found out she had cancer because she couldn't get pregnant. And she ended up getting pregnant twice. And her oldest daughter just had her first baby. So now my patient is a grandmother and a psychoanalyst. And here we are, 35 years later, she's fine.
Wow. So what changed? What was the difference? What improved?
Oh, she was living a life of complete self-sacrifice. Her brother had been imprisoned as a political statement, and she was spending her life going to the prison, doing his laundry, bringing him food, completely not living her own life. And when she got cancer, she realized, I have to attend to myself. I'm going to die if I don't start taking care of myself. And so she went holistic. She didn't do chemotherapy, even though the doctors told her that she would die if she didn't do it. And she didn't, and changed how she ate, and learned how to deal with psychological stress. Went into psychoanalysis and discovered all of the unconscious conflicts that she had had from childhood and not having good mothering. And so it all worked out.
So it sounds like you're saying that cancer, in your experience, tends to be something both psychological and physical, or is it one or both, or more than one than the other? Or
it can be one without the other, and it can be both.
it could be a spectrum, a combination, yeah. Or it could fall anywhere on the spectrum.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where the curiosity comes in. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of cancers that are just environmentally induced.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're living on a poisoned planet.
Yeah. So how can you tell if someone is more physically, contaminated or affected more, or more psychologically? What are the indicators, or how do you track it?
You just listen to what they say.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell you.
Yeah.
They may not even know what they're saying when they're saying it, but when you listen, you hear it, and then they start hearing it also. You might hear it before they hear it themselves, and you might point out, sounds like you've had a difficult few years. Sounds like you've been in pain. Sounds like that was, very, very difficult for you to deal with.
Well, the fact that, like, say 120 years ago, there was hardly any cancer on the planet, and now it's just, 50% of the people or whatever died from it, something happened. Yeah. It seems like a lot of that was the way we physically degraded the environment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I don't know if people are that more psychologically impaired than they were 120 years ago.
I think that the factors combine together so that they get weighted in terms of the seriousness of the effect, and certainly the toxicity of the environment is greater now than it was then. So in terms of the weightedness of that as a contributing factor, it is much greater than it used to be. So it leaves us more vulnerable. So if there is a psychological conflict, we're kind of primed to be more wounded by that because of the woundedness from the physical environment that's already weakened us.
Right. So what are the kind of Well, there's a couple things. One is, what would you recommend if someone thought they had cancer or knew of someone, and what are some of the solutions that you have found?
Well, let me go into why I'm calling this talk "Disease is Never a Mistake,"
Right.
specifically as relates to cancer. Although, I could go through pretty much all the diseases. So the definition of having cancer, most cancers, is that you have a tumor. Sorry, this screen keeps
No,
changing.
that's okay. Well, there's just a shift on the screen there. You're good. Keep going.
Um, so they diagnose that you have a tumor, and then they say, okay, it's malignant or it's benign. If it's benign, they do something else, but they don't kill you by poison. But if it's malignant, then the tumor, actually, the definition of the tumor is the same as the definition of the disease. They say you have cancer, and so Western medicine decides that the treatment, the cure, is to eradicate the tumor. So they have three methods of doing that: surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
If you understand that actually what's happening is that the tumor is a life-saving mechanism, the tumor is not the disease, the tumor is actually saving your life, then you begin to not see the tumor as the enemy. You begin to see the tumor as your friend. So how is the tumor a life-saving mechanism? So the body has various defensive mechanisms, and they follow a kind of evolutionary pattern. Regeneration is one. So like in the lower life forms, like you take a salamander, you cut off his tail regenerates. So that's a very apropos defense mechanism for a salamander. We humans also have regenerative power. Of course, if you cut off my arm, so far we haven't discovered the ability to regrow an arm, but we may, in the future. But we replace all kinds of cells in our bodies. It just takes a little longer, and don't regenerate our limbs. So also, one of the defensive mechanisms is isolation. So if I get a splinter in my finger, my foot doesn't hurt, my abdomen doesn't swell up, my finger swells up, because the body isolates where the injury is or where the problem is. So one of the systems that the body has in terms of dealing with pathogens is that it will take the pathogens and it will put them in a place. It'll isolate them in a place.
Mm-hmm.
Oysters do that. So you have an oyster and something kind of gets into the shell of the oyster, and it's usually like a bacteria or a virus or parasite. And so the oyster recognizes that a foreign invader has come inside of it, and then it creates a membrane around that pathogen or that invader. And so it cordons it off from the rest of the oyster. And then over a series of biochemical processes, that pathogen that has been isolated evolves into what we now call a pearl. So, but it's the isolation defensive mechanism that has created the pearl and the creation of the membrane. So similarly with the body, the tumor is taking the pathogens that are systemically around the body, circulating throughout, puts them in one place, builds a membrane around it, and we call that a tumor. So the tumor is collecting the toxins in one place so that you're not as systemically toxic as if all those toxins were circulating. The danger with the radiation, if you want to get rid of a tumor, the fastest way of getting rid of a tumor is to do radiation chemotherapy. Those really do reduce tumors very quickly. But where does the tumor go? I mean, it doesn't disappear into the air. It's got to go, it's inside your body. So if it's disappearing somewhere inside your body. So what's happening is that instead of those pathogens and they have looked at the ingredients of a tumor, and it's all kinds of shit, basically. It's trash. They find all kinds of things, inside of tumors. And so now all of a sudden, all that stuff is circulating around the body, and you're no longer just dealing with a tumor in one place. You're dealing with systemic toxicity, the toxicity of the dissolution of the tumor, but also the toxicity of the condition to begin with, which created the tumor to begin with. So you get double toxic from chemotherapy radiation.
Right. So how do you work with people with cancer in a way that maybe a more holistic way, a more effective way?
Well, oddly, the first thing is that you have to help the person to reconceptualize what their disease is. If they don't understand that the tumor is not the enemy, they won't get any program that is holistic.
They have to, first of all, dispel the idea that they have to destroy the tumor. So say that you can get to the point where they see tumor as sort of a natural body defense. There's something underneath it that we need to address. They're open-minded enough. Then what do you do?
So you do what my mother did 50 years ago. You detox. You know that you're in a toxic condition. And so, choose your detox. There are 1,000 of them available today.
Right. So and you're detoxing from you said the spectrum. It could be from just physical toxin things or combinations of psychological negative thinking.
Could be from not eating organic foods, could be from EMF. I mean, EMF is one of the biggest toxins that we have these days.
Electromagnetic frequencies from towers, cell phones, dirty electricity.
Right. Yeah.
So how do you evaluate where it's coming from? Or you said from the questioning, you kind of just do a kind of a questionnaire with them to isolate what the maybe culprits are?
No, I don't think I do a questionnaire. I just do tell me what you're thinking and feeling. I just ask people to free associate.
Well, informally talk to them, yeah.
Yes, informally. So the house that I'm in now, I've essentially created a Faraday cage around my bed because in all of this house, every room in my house where the highest EMF is, you just get a meter for, I don't know, they sell them for about $100. And you can tell where the EMF,
it'll measure it.
And my bed was a hotbed. I was sleeping on a hotbed of EMF. And so I've had to do all kinds of things to remediate that. And I discovered that because I couldn't sleep. When I bought this house, I went through 2 years of not sleeping.
Yeah, and the wiring from like old wiring houses, there could be all kinds of things. Cell towers.
The wiring, I had renovated the house. The wiring in my house right under my bed was completely wrong. I had to redo the wiring.
Yeah, just like our cells are made electromagnetically, are affected and working just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not directly affecting us. When you said a Faraday cage, probably most people don't know what that is.
I created a space through various remedial procedures that I took where my bed now is relatively EMF free. So I'm sleeping under a sheet that is EMF protective. I'm sleeping on top of a quilt, I guess we could call it, that is EMF protective. I have a kill switch, so I can turn off all of the electricity that is coming into the room. There's nothing plugged in to my bedroom when I'm sleeping. Let's see, what else have I done? I have, I wear EMF protective things around my neck, and I have an EMF tower that sits next to my bed. So there are various things. There are lots of these little toys that you can get from the internet that
shields and blankets and pendants and things. How do you know which are the ones to trust?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's such a new field. It's very hard to kind of get.
I mean, if you have a meter, you just test it.
You test it with your meters.
I mean, I spoke to a friend of mine, and he's got all of these little, I have them over there. I could go get them and show them to you. And he puts them all around. And he said that it actually turned the Wi-Fi off.
Right.
He put them around. He was no longer able to get on Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So unfortunately, though, you'd have to buy them before you could test them, so you wouldn't know ahead of time.
Yeah. Well, some of them are pretty cheap, though. Not all of them.
Yeah. So she's talking about, I think it's called a tri-field meter you can get at different places, Amazon and such, which measures the EMF and the different electrical outputs that are in your house and which ones are very high.
Yeah.
That are, if you go around your router, for instance, like in our house, that's going to be the strongest place of EMFs coming out, not surprisingly.
And you can hire a professional. When I moved into this house, I had no idea why I was not sleeping, and I hired a professional to come and assess. And she found some really interesting things. She found, number one, that I had a leak in my furnace so it was emitting gas in the basement. I had no idea. She also found that I had mold growing in my basement, which I had no idea. And then she also, upstairs where I sleep, she found all of the EMF stuff. A friend of mine owns a company called Vital Home. So it's all around the country. And she has people go out to people's houses, and they're very experienced, and they tell you everything you need to know.
Okay, so EMF is a big cancer producer and other diseases, of course.
And getting worse with 5G, it's going to get worse.
Yeah, the 5G. And it's interesting. It's something that's, it's kind of shockingly hidden, although it's coming in plain sight. I mean, you just hear like, wow, your internet's going to be faster. This is going to be the greatest thing. It's like, everyone's going to be smoking, smoking cigarettes, and they're going to feel great. I mean, it's just a crazy thing.
Philip, I did at the beginning of COVID. I'm a researcher. I love reading. I mean, I research. I'm not an original researcher. So I love reading and I love writing. I've written 8 books, and I have a newsletter called Musings from 20th Street because my center in New York is on 20th Street. At the beginning of COVID, I spent probably about 12 hours a day reading and listening to podcasts. And then I constructed the longest newsletter that I'd ever written on COVID. I really needed to understand what COVID was. And so one of the things that puzzled me was the ship. Why would people on a cruise ship start getting sick? And then I found the ad that came out right before the cruise took off. And the ad said, "We have 5G on our cruise ship now." Hello.
So how do you figure the 5G contributes to the virus?
I think it's what we're talking about, that the convergence of all of these factors just leaves you more vulnerable.
It's just one more whammy that we're dealing with. Yeah.
Whammy is a good word. Yeah.
Yeah. So you get the food, the toxins in the food, the air, the water, and now the electricity. So it's just sort of everywhere. Yeah. So you just do the best you can to be as safe and as clean and as toxin free as you can.
Well, I think we have found ways of living in this world, and I think we can. There are certainly people that feel that we're pretty much at the end of civilization.
Yeah.
We humans have adapted really quite well. I mean, a lot of us have died in the process, but a lot of us have lived, and we seem to be pretty adaptable beings. And so I think we'll figure it out. Our bodies will figure it out, and our minds will figure out how to protect our bodies better.
So the soulful living, the strategy you're sharing today, Jane Goldberg from New York City, psychoanalyst, holistic practitioner, author, is disease is never a mistake. So when this happens to you, you're somewhat subject to your environment, often not realizing all the things you're being subjected to. And then there's the psychological things growing up that you may not be aware of too, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so some combination of that. Okay.
It's usually a combination.
Yeah.
It's usually the two, kind of the mind and the body kind of intersecting with each other.
Do you want to share some more strategies or solutions you've found to deal with all of this when you've realized disease is something that's been created from the environment and your psychology?
One of the people that I like a lot is Tom Cowan. He was an MD. He just gave up his medical license, actually. And he's very interested in water. And there's Robert Slovak, who has been a water person and basically owned a company that was involved with water. And he got very interested in deuterium depleted water. It's called DDW for deuterium depleted water. So I'm going to hold up his product. So I've kind of fallen in love with this product. It's called Light Water. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing about deuterium is that when the universe was created, there was hydrogen, and then there was a little isotope of hydrogen that was deuterium. And so they discovered that when you have a lot of deuterium, well, the discovery came because there's a place in Russia where North Russia, where people were living to over 100. This was before World War I. There were researchers, and they said, why are people living so long in this one geographical area? And so what they figured out was that they were drinking water that was glacial water. So it was freezing, it was melting, it was freezing, it was melting. And what they understood from their research was that it was depleted in deuterium. So again, deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen. It's everywhere and it's in our water. But if you find water that's deuterium depleted, it depletes it in your body. And what we know is that the more deuterium you have in your body, the less healthy you are. So you want to deplete deuterium from your body. And the best way to do that is to drink water that's deuterium depleted. So the Russians started doing research, and they were trying to figure out, okay, well, this water, it's great for these people that live here, but how are we going to get the water to the rest of the people in the country? And so they were trying to figure that out. And then, well, actually, it was before World War II, not World War I. Sorry about that. What they understood was that they needed deuterium to make the atomic bomb. So there's a fascinating history about how they were, they built this deuterium depleted factory in Norway, and the English found out about it. And so they were trying to bomb it, to destroy it, because the Germans were the ones that built it, and the Germans were going to get ahead, and they were going to have the atomic bomb before the English and before the Americans, and blah, blah, blah. And because that happened, the research on the health properties of deuterium stopped and didn't continue for a really long time. So Robert Slovak recently found a Russian who decided to give $30 million to build a factory in Russia to make deuterium depleted water. And so that's what this is. There's another company in Romania that makes another product that's deuterium depleted, but I like this one because the bottle actually it's plastic, but it's coated with something so that the plastic is irrelevant to the water. It's called light water, LITE, because actually heavy water is heavy in deuterium, and that's what they need for the atomic bomb. And this is light water, which is the opposite of heavy water.
So to summarize, because this is if this is the first time you've heard of, which most people probably it is listening to this, the deuterium is actually a problem in the water we have in our system and we're drinking commonly. And to get deuterium depleted water, which is you want something that's without it, which is a little confusing, but it's like glacial water, but it's very hard because if you're not drinking glacial water, but who is, they have to find this technologically sophisticated way to make the water like glacial water, which this person Robert Slovak did. So is it kind of hard, and is it pretty expensive to get the water? Is it from, how does that work?
You sign up with a company, and you're on a system, and they just mail it to you every month.
You have a subscription. How much do you drink of it?
I don't know how much I drink each day, but I put in half water, and then the other, I do a 1-to-1 ratio.
Oh, I see. So you go half. I see. So all the water you drink is half deuterium depleted and half regular water.
Yeah, okay. And I'll probably go through. This is 32 ounces. I'll go through almost that in a day.
Okay. All right. So that's one solution, is the deuterium depleted water, and what else?
Oh, I don't know. Ask me about something.
Yeah, I mean, for helping people with cancer and disease, what other solutions or what other treatments do you do working with people? How else? It could be psychological or physical. What?
I really like working with dreams. I find dreams to be very prescient and symbolic and revealing. I've had patients come in and tell me dreams where they did not know they had cancer and weren't thinking that they had cancer. And an alarm bell went off in my brain, and I said, this person's going to end up in trouble soon. The body is, we are basically an information network. We're an information highway. The body is talking to the brain, and the brain is talking to the body. And so if you listen to both of them, then you'll find the information that you need.
So how does it go? Do you go from a dream where like the curiosity and it's revealing, does it actually lead to healing too?
Oh, it can, absolutely.
I mean, first of all, it is to be aware, but does it actually go from like, is there stories you have where someone gets the dream, understands how it relates to cancer, and it somehow leads to a cure or an improvement?
Okay, I'm going to tell you a dream I had a month ago. I dreamt that I was with this old Jamaican toothless woman, and she touched me, and I collapsed on the ground. And when I kind of came to consciousness, a second later, I said, this has transformed me. This has been a transformative experience. And so I went through the day. I mean, I remember the dream. It was a very powerful dream. I had no idea about it. I just thought, wow, this is pretty interesting. And that night, I usually finish talking to my patients about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Because I'm spending a lot of time on the phone these days or on Zoom these days because, my patients are not coming in person. So 10 o'clock, I'm kind of done talking. And if the phone rings, I usually ignore it. So 10 o'clock, the phone rang. And for some odd reason, I went to look at it. Usually I just ignore it, but I went to look at it. I saw caller ID. It said unknown person. I didn't answer it. And I don't know why, because I have literally never done this before in my life. I called that number and I said, you just called me. I had no idea who I was calling. And this woman just started talking, and she went on and talked and talked. And, she talked about 5 minutes, and I'm thinking, I don't even know who she is. She has an accent. I don't even know what she's saying. And then she said my name. So I understood that she knew, even though I didn't know who I was talking to, she knew that she was talking to me. And then a few minutes later, she said the name of a mutual friend. And I said, oh, okay. She's calling me because she's spoken to this guy, Mike, that I know. And, he's into holistic health. And we talked for about 45 minutes. It turns out she's a naturopathic doctor. She's in Queens, so she's nearby where I am in New York. And we just really congealed and, got along really well. And for some reason, I decided to tell her my dream. And at the end of telling her my dream, she said, I'm Jamaican. And I thought, oh my God, this is like too cosmically coincidental. I mean, I dream about a Jamaican woman, and the next night, or that night, actually, because the dream was in the morning, that night, this Jamaican woman calls me and just starts talking my ear off for an hour. And so I mentioned, and I said, when I told her, I felt that in the dream, I said, this dream, I have been transformed. And I said to her, my interpretation of that is that I've been struggling with a back issue for over a year. I don't know, exactly what the problem is, but it gives me kind of limited range of motion. And I've been going to chiropractors and osteopaths and acupuncturists. I've done every physical therapy. I've done everything known to mankind. I even went to Tijuana for a treatment to see if I could and nothing has worked for over a year. And so this woman said, oh, I know what will help you. And I got that my back was going to be cured. And I had a treatment, today is Sunday. I had a treatment Tuesday, and I woke up Wednesday and I had no back pain. And the man that I went to, I absolutely know, there's not a single doubt in my mind that this man has the technology that my back is going to be fine. So my dream led me to it.
So your dream led you to this person who healed your back?
Well, it's too early to say he's healed it. I can
Okay, you're not sure how far, but was the dream somehow leading you to this person?
The dream opened me up to the possibility that I really could find, after a year of spending so much money and going to so many practitioners, going to another country, that the answer was close by. And so when I found out about this man that I'm now seeing, I was completely open to, this is it. He's going to be it. And then I had this experience.
Great. So did he do something special or different from others, or what was his?
He's invented his own technique that is really miraculous.
He is a person, so, okay. Wow. Okay. Do you want to mention who he is or no?
He's in New Jersey. He's a massage therapist by training, and he's put together 2 treatments that nobody else has put together. One of them is called Medi-cupping. So he's breaking up scar tissue by doing cupping under. He's got an air pressure machine that makes the suction so powerful that it actually, when he moves the cups, of course, that's, an acupuncture treatment of cupping. It's actually painful, but he says he's got to break up all of those adhesions and all of that scar tissue, because that's the only way you're going to get electricity in. And then he does a treatment that I have. It's PMF, pulsed electromagnetic field, and I have about 8 different PMF devices. I use, about 3 of them in my center in New York. But his is different than anything I've ever seen. And so he's charging up my cells. After he's breaking up the adhesions and kind of clearing the body, then he's charging up my cells, and my body loves it.
So there's these suction cups, which some people may know, which kind of cup suction onto your whatever part of your body, your back. And so he has a particularly strong, special way of doing that, which breaks up the congestion.
The combination of moving the cups and the intense suction pressure. Like I said, it's painful.
So he actually is moving the cups while they're on there?
Yeah. And what he's doing is he's lifting the adhesions, because the adhesions are all glopped together to the bones and to the fascia, and everything is kind of entangled. And so what he's doing is lifting it so that it comes off, and then obviously you get more oxygen in, you get more mobility, you get everything good.
Okay, so there's a special way, and then he does another machine, a PMF machine, to break up or to help heal the when things are more looser or open, to help restore things back. To do what?
To take charge, to take an electrical charge.
To charge them electrically properly. Yeah. Okay, that's
the PMF technology was discovered by the Russians. They sent Yuri Gagarin was the first person to go into outer space. He was up for like 48 minutes, something like that. Not very long. He came back near death, and the Russians said, "We got to figure out what's going on here before we send the next guy up. Why is this guy so sick?" It turns out that his entire metabolic system had collapsed. And that's what happens when you leave Earth's electromagnetic gravitational field. So every manned spacecraft since then has had a PMF device on it so that they come back. Sadly, they didn't understand that in time for Yuri Gagarin, and he went into a clinical depression and committed suicide 7 years later. But we know that the people that really know holistic health in a very serious way know PMF. They use it in all of the holistic cancer clinics in Europe. It is a way of recharging the body. And if we're sick, then the charge of our cells is lower than it should be. And when it's low enough, cancer develops, and then it gets lower and lower, and then there's no charge, and then you die. You die with not enough electrical charge.
So people, if they would probably have to go to a practitioner to get a PMF device, because it's a costly device. It's not something people can get in their homes and stuff, unless.
One of the ones I have was $35,000. Another one that I have was $1,400. Another one that I have is $800. You can get all level. Another one I have is $450. So obviously the more expensive ones have the one that he's using on me is I think he said it was $27,000.
Yeah.
So the man who makes the $800 one says that his is just as good. It has just as much long-term power, because it's less power, so you can wear it, and he makes these kind of wearable things, like you can put them in a hat, you can put them around your waist, and you can leave them on for 4 hours at a time because they're battery operated. So yeah, this is technology that's pretty advanced these days, and anybody can, depending on what you want to spend and how convenient you want it to be, anybody can get this.
Right. Something accessible. Okay, so for diseases never mistake, you mentioned the deuterium depleted water. using your dreams, the PMF device, recharging. Anything else you want to add?
I like intermittent fasting. I like letting the body, we're detoxing when we sleep. Sleep is the most important time for our brains to detox. It turns out that they discovered a few years back that the brain, like the lymphatic system that cleanses and detoxes, the brain has its own detox system called glyphatic. And if the brain is not detoxing at night, meaning if you're not getting enough sleep, then the brain gets toxic, and you feel that in your brain. You feel fuzzy or not clear or sleepy all the time, or you lose your memory. You build up plaque, beta amyloid plaque, which is correlated with Alzheimer's.
So when you intermittently fast, not eat, how many hours do you have a particular recommendation you have for yourself or other people? I know women seem to be able to fast less amount of time from what I've heard than men, but what's your recommendations, or what have you found?
I think you just have to figure out what works for you.
Personal.
There's some people that say eat within a 6-hour time frame. I can't do that.
Right.
But I do eat late in the day. There are other people that say breakfast is the most important meal. I don't eat usually until about 3:00. So, but I do eat late at night, which is, most of the people say that's not good, that you don't want to be digesting food when you're sleeping. But it works for me, and I'm 74, and except for this back issue that I've been dealing with, which I now know I'm not going to be dealing with in another month or two. I'm not going to have a back problem. I'm totally convinced of that, but everything else is perfectly healthy, and I expect to live another 20 years or so. My daughter is counting on my living another 40 years.
Good. And what was the curiosity? What did you come to discover about the back thing, for yourself? What did it reveal to you?
I didn't know, because I didn't have an injury, and I didn't think it was psychosomatic. I'm pretty sensitive to what my brain, mind, psyche is doing. But this man that I'm working with now has gotten me to understand, basically, as you get older, things just happen. Things they get tight, and they adhere to each other, and it's just an aging process. And so that's things happen.
Aging is the most, it's sort of common to almost every disease. Is your biggest risk factor is getting older.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's great, Jane. Anything else you wanted to add? We may be getting close to closing time. Anything else you wanted to conclude with here?
So I've developed a program. I've spent the last 10 years working on this. It's called Brainercise. So it's a series of exercises that people do together in groups. And the point of it was, when I first started working on it, my daughter was in the living room, and she was going like this. And I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, I'm on Lumosity." And I just started this, and I said, "Oh, no, you're giving business to my competition." Of course, I didn't have any competition, because I didn't even have a business. I still don't have a business. I just have a concept. But anyway, I knew she would be off of it in like an hour or a day or a week, because this is really boring. So all of the brain enhancement programs are digital. And digital is not interesting. It's auditory and it's visual, but we've got 5 senses. And so my Brainercise program, I decided I need to develop a program where it's all 5 senses. And the only way you can do that is if people come together. So I developed it. I got really interested in, I'm one of the creators of a system that's group psychoanalysis. So originally psychoanalysis was just one-to-one, and about maybe 40 years or so ago, we started doing psychoanalysis in group settings. And so I'm one of the originators of that. And so I've got a bunch of groups, and now we're meeting on Zoom. I didn't think it would work on Zoom. I really thought being in person was the issue. But for analysis, that is only auditory and visual. And so Zoom works perfectly well for my psychoanalytic groups. So now I'm adapting my model of Brainercise to be digital and in delivery, but for people to come together in groups when we can do that. So I just wanted to mention that because at my age, everybody that I talk to that's my age is telling me that they're losing words and, short-term memory is not so good. So the program is really good for helping us to age better.
So how do people
brains.
find out more about your Brainercise program, Jane?
The website is brainercise.org, and it would have been ready, except now with COVID, everything is stopped. So I can't say when it's going to start, but and
coming. So if people want, can they be on your list or be notified when it's? How would they get on your list or contact you?
My email is Jane Goldberg at janegoldbergphd.com, and Jane is Jane and Goldberg is like the TV show. Also, I do want to mention that I have a second La Casa. It's actually the first La Casa in Puerto Rico. So it's a 10-acre farm, and it's a productive farm. I've got tons of papaya, mangoes, coconut, and we also have a vegetable garden. And so that was doing great until COVID. And so we didn't have much business in the last 6 months or so, but we're beginning to open up now. And that is called La Casa Spa and Wellness Puerto Rico. That's the website, La Casa Spa and Wellness Puerto Rico.com. And lacasaspa.com is my New York
City.
And my personal, in New York City. And my professional website is DR for Dr. drjanegoldberg.com. So people can find me, easily enough. I also did a group therapy series I had a TV show, but unfortunately YouTube took most of that was really fun. And I still get people contacting me. What happened? They were using this to teach actually psychoanalysis in universities. So it's really too bad that YouTube erased them, but I'm still trying to find I have the original tapes. I just have to get somebody to redo it.
Wow.
But some of them still on.
We didn't even get into the irradiated stones and everything. I don't know, maybe we'd love to have you back. Do you want to just mention just a brief, because people don't even know what
the dog that's not the dog that's barking, that was Lily, and the radiation stones completely saved her life, and that got me into this little known healing technology of low-level radiation. X-rays are high-level radiation, X-ray therapy is high-level radiation, but low-level radiation that you get from thorium stones. And this was the stones were mined by Jay Gutierrez. Pretty much everywhere there's a hot spring on the planet, that's radiation. And hot springs are very healing. They know this. When I went to Jamaica, I went up into the Blue Mountains, and it's this windy road, and it's dirt, and it's hard, on the car. And finally you get to the top and you're at this spot. And I went because it was a hot spring. And there's a big sign that says, "We have the highest level of radiation on the island." They get that. They're proud of saying that they are radioactive. They understand the healing, and high level still is low level according to our standards of, thinking about radiation medically. It's still really low level. There are over 3,000 medical studies, gold standard medical studies that have proven that with exposure to low level radiation, you get you get longevity, you get better fertility, you get better health, you get everything good. There are two really interesting studies. If I have time, I'll tell you the two studies that I find the most fascinating. So one of them is, who knows the most about radiation? The Japanese. And it didn't start with Fukushima, it started with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So what they did was they studied, of course, the people that were right in the epicenter, they basically died immediately. They were burned to death. And then out here, there were people that got secondary cancers like thyroid cancer.
We're talking about World War II and the atomic bomb.
Yeah, Nagasaki.
Afterwards,
So then they compared the people out here that got no level exposure to the people here who got mild exposure. And they found that these people that got low level exposure have lived longer than these people that got no exposure. So that's pretty fascinating. The other study that I like to refer to is Bernie Cohen's study. So Bernie Cohen was professor emeritus at the University of Pittsburgh, and he did this study. Of course, Here, I'm in my house in New Jersey now, and in New Jersey, this has been true for probably about 30 years now. When you sell your house, you have to be tested for radon. So there are various places in the country where there's higher radon than other places, and New Jersey happens to be a high radon. There's the reading prong, and it goes through Pennsylvania and comes up through New Jersey. So he was in Pennsylvania, so he knew about radon. So he decided to study radon. So, radon causes cancer, right? Everybody knows radon causes
That's
cancer.
what people have been told.
That's why you have to have your house tested. If you have high radon in your basement, then you have to buy a radon eliminator. That whole concept created a $1 billion industry of radon eliminators and radon testing. So Bernie Cohen absolutely thought, okay, simple little study, largest epidemiological study ever conducted in the US. He took 90% of the counties of the US. He had a map and he said, okay, this is where the radon is. And then he took another map and overlaid it and said, okay, this is where the cancer is, and fully expected high radon, high cancer. And he found the opposite, high radon, low cancer. And then he started splicing up the data, for all the cofactors, variables, blah, blah, blah. Still got the same results, and he didn't understand it. And so he just put it aside and did some other research for 5 years. And then he came back to the study and repeated the whole damn study all over again and got exactly the same results. So then he went into his basement and he turned off his radon eliminator.
Right.
So high radon, low cancer.
Yep. Yeah. So it's just another thing that's completely hidden. In fact, sort of backwards in society, because since high radiation is a danger, people think any radiation is, and it's kind of like everything else, just the dosage and the amount of everything. And the irradiated stones you get from Nighthawk Minerals there, is that where you recommend getting them from? That's where we got them from. There's mud packs with radiated stones through the mud. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I showed you this before we went on. I have a little radioactive stone in my water.
Stone in the water, so you get the radiated water. And
I sleep on a radioactive pad. And Don Lucky lived to over 100. And he was one of the leading researchers on radiation hormesis. By the way, the book that I wrote on, it's called The Hormesis Effect, and that's available from the publisher.
Yeah, Jane wrote a whole book on it, The Hormesis Effect, which we have read and recommend.
Yeah, people like that book. My books tend to be really dense and difficult because they're dense, but that book is not dense. It's really easy to read and people love it, actually. So Don Lucky slept with it's still low level, but in terms of stones, it was kind of high level, and there's a way of measuring the radioactive energy of the stones. And because he lived so long, I decided I'm gonna get a hot stone. Jay used to call them hot stones. And so I sleep with that next to my bed. I have a hot stone, and I also do ozone. I have an ozone generator here at my house. And then of course we have at La Casa, we have the Hocket, which is an amazing system that combines 10 different therapies, including ozone. So I also put a stone in the steamer that heats up, it creates steam that goes into the ozone cabinet, so that, you're heating up your body. So you're opening up the pores so that then you put the ozone into the cabinet, but your pores are open and thus receiving the ozone. So the steam that I'm getting also is irradiated. So I find ways, throughout the day and I walk barefoot. So I'm getting electrical energy from being on, and I hug my tree. I have a special tree that I go to every morning.
That's great. Yeah. So that's some other information for people to begin to explore. That's very interesting and valuable. Great, Jane. Hey, anything else you wanted to add before we close here?
Any other questions that come to your mind? I could go on
Nothing.
forever.
Yeah. I think, hopefully we can come back and have another round, because, we could start over again on a whole topic. I know you had things about narcissism and all kinds of things that probably is worth devoting, an episode to.
We had talked originally about listening, and I do want to say there was a study that was done. They asked people that had been diagnosed with cancer, how did you feel about what your loved one said to you? And 80% of the people said they didn't like what their loved ones said when they told them their cancer diagnosis. I think listening is an art.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I learned the art of listening in my
Mm-hmm.
training as a psychoanalyst. And I think that people really, it's not like you learn math like in school. You don't learn listening unless you've been exposed to listening. And a lot of us haven't been exposed to good listening. So I guess I just want to say it's really important to listen to people.
Yes, it is.
And you know what? I want to end with a quote from Einstein. Einstein said that the most important question that anybody can ask is the universe friendly? And he decided that it is, because he saw evidence everywhere that nature has a benevolent and a compassionate side. So that's why I make sure that every morning I go outside, and because behind my house is 150 acres of forest. So I feel very fortunate. So I want to be in nature, and I think everybody does need to be in nature some.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thanks so much, Jane. Hey, so those were some wonderful keys, some tips about remember disease is never a mistake with their special guest, Jane Goldberg, drjanegoldberg.com. And the ultimate goal of soulful living is to live that way, more soulfully, more aligned with your deeper self and nature, as Jane was saying. And these simple strategies you can use daily. Remember this one about disease is never a mistake. Be curious, find out what's going on, and uh, align your life accordingly. And we are here, Jane Mountrose, my wife Jane, too, at getting thru.org/holistic. And we value your support and tuition for our courses and other purchases. Support us to make the world a more loving place. Please share this show with other people. Let them know about it. Have a wonderful week. Until next time. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Phil.